Joe Biden has had a rough couple of weeks in terms of his gaffes. You can probably fill it in, but you know, Parkland and Theresa May, and he's getting terror attacks wrong. And it's just he's fumbling from one gaffe to another, and his aides have been watching this, and so they apparently have a new strategy that they might implement. They've been floating the idea of altering his schedule in an effort to reduce the gaffes he's made in recent days. The allies, growing increasingly nervous about Biden's verbal flubs, have said it's an approach that's been suggested in two campaign officials on the heels of the former vice president's stumbles. And so effectively by alter his schedule, they mean not have him in public as much. Because if he's in public, he can talk, and if he can talk, he can gaffe, and they just gotta get right out in front of that. And so you guys have covered a lot of races over the years. Is it a good sign when the strategy is to take you off the campaign trail and out of the public eye?
No, when you're trying to hide the candidate, that's probably means you don't have a good candidate.
That's like Weekend at Bernie's, where the guy was dead and they were trying to pretend like he was alive. You don't want to have to like pretend like your candidate is like, oh yeah, he's good, he's ready to go. He's just not right. He needs, he's gonna take a little break, but we'll be back. He's doing all right. Trust us, he's gonna be fine.
Yeah, and the thing is too, like so you have your advice is bad idea, but one ally says he needs to be a strong force on the campaign trail, but he also has to pace himself. I mean, the thing is, look, he had already been campaigning less than a lot of the others. Like not everybody is campaigning at the same pace as each other. And Joe Biden joined not last, there have been others since he joined, but he was one of the last ones. He's been in this for literally months less than some of the earliest candidates.
No, guys, they're telling their own candidate to shut up. That is not a good sign. No one on planet Earth could pretend that's a good sign. One of his allies said, no, Biden's great. He just has a tendency to make blunders later in the day.
That's brutal.
I'm more of an early morning president.
Yeah.
Every in the afternoon, you leave the vice president to do that.
Yeah, so number one, if you're worried that your candidate's too old, saying he's got to get the early bird special and he can't talk later at night is not a good way to go. And secondly, you still have to be president at night. So it's terrible. But another one I was amused by. Apparently, a major Democratic donor, according to The Hill, said this: a lot of people are nervous that he's lost some of his mojo. They're getting nervous about him going toe to toe with Trump. But the problem is there doesn't seem to be an alternative. There's 25 people in the race.
There's never been as many alternatives.
That's right. And so why would a major Democratic donor say that? Because they're like, well, because number 2 and number 3 are Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, or Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. And that is not an alternative if you're a Democratic donor. They're like, that's a nightmare for them because they actually would end the corruption, or at least they would attempt to end the corruption. So the donors are like, I mean, I don't know who's left. I guess nobody's left, right? Yeah. And they know the other moderates, conservatives, whatever you want to call them, in the race can't win because their ideas suck. They're just trying to ride off of Biden's name recognition. And so, I mean, we were told that Hickenlooper was from a purple state governor and conservative Democrat, and that's how you win in this country. After polling at 0% for most of the race, dropped out yesterday because he had no prayer. Because it doesn't work. The voters don't want conservative, pro-corporate, pro-donor Democrats. That's why Biden starting to fade is causing a panic in the Democratic establishment.
So here's the thing, that obviously all that I read you, the new strategy, which they dispute, some are saying they're not gonna do that, but some are saying they are. That sounds like really bad news for Joe Biden today, but I read something else that sounds like worse news for Joe Biden, and it involves his best buddy in the entire world, Barack Obama. So former President Obama, you've probably read this, has taken an active interest in Joe Biden's presidential campaign, even holding a lunch with his former vice president last month. That all sounds good. Joe wants to hang out with him more anyway. It's been very clear. But apparently there had been some talk before Biden launched his candidacy that does not look good now for him. Obama asked 2 Biden aides to visit with him in March for a briefing on its strategy. Afterward, the Times reported that Obama told the aides they should make sure that Biden does not, quote, embarrass himself or, quote, damage his legacy while running for president. But he said, that's what he said to the aides, which is bad. But what he said to Joe might be worse. You don't have to do this, Joe, you really don't, Obama told Mr. Biden earlier this year, according to a person familiar with the exchange. So
Obama's never believed in him.
To some extent, the way you say that might make some difference, but that's not like go get him, buddy.
Yeah, and look, let's keep it real on a couple of different fronts on Obama. Obama convinced Biden not to run last time around because Obama doesn't believe in Biden. Part of the reason he doesn't believe in Biden is he kicked the living crap out of Biden in a primary really, really easily. People forget back in the 2008 primary, it was mainly Obama versus Hillary Clinton, but there was a whole bunch of other Democrats in there, including Joe Biden, and Obama had way less name recognition than Joe Biden, had way less money in the beginning, had less everything, and easily crushed Biden because he is not a good candidate. All he's ever done is win in Delaware because he was, a congressman or senator from there for as literally my entire life. So he's never won a contested election in like 50 years. So, and why is he even in this race? Because he won a coin toss, in effect, right? It wasn't a literal coin toss, but Obama's like, should I go with Evan Bayh or should I go with Joe Biden to appeal to white voters? And he had a couple other names in there, I'm sure, Chris Dodd, etc. And he's like, Biden, oh, okay. If Evan Bayh had won the coin toss and was vice president, does anybody think Joe Biden would be in the presidential race, let alone leading? No one thinks that. So he has no actual, great credentials in being a candidate. Now, which leads me to the most devastating part, the actual polling. The Biden fade has begun. So now we got a poll out of Iowa. I believe that's a fairly relevant state. It's starting line at Change Polls, and in we've got a new leader, Elizabeth Warren. In fact, Joe Biden's now tied with Bernie Sanders. So depending on how you want to frame it, he's tied for second, tied for third, and fading and fading. Warren now has an 11-point lead in Iowa against Biden. Now here's the thing, you can say, hey, that's just one poll, and you could talk about, hey, what is the credibility of that poll, etc. But guys, it doesn't really matter. Does anyone think that Joe Biden, after losing the lead, is going to retake the lead? No one that knows politics thinks that. Once the fade begins, it's good night, Irene. Okay, then it's late night and he can't even talk. And then finally, you want to talk about a bigger poll, and the whole country. An Economist YouGov poll now has Biden at 21% nationally and Elizabeth Warren at 20%. She's only 1 point behind him. So here comes Warren, and there goes Biden. And guys, the Democratic establishment has not woken up to this. Warren and Sanders are 2 and 3 with a guy who's almost certainly going to drop out of the top spot. That leaves the top 2 as progressives.
Well, they're afraid of progressives the same way that they were arguing against starting impeachment processes because they thought that starting the impeachment process, they were looking at what it did for Clinton back then. We're in a different world now. I think we're in a world where people can handle and want a more progressive candidate. So I think they should stop being afraid of being progressive.
Yeah, damn right. I wonder if anybody said that before. Oh, look at this tweet I found. The last tweet from election night 2016, I tweeted, mark my words, Elizabeth Warren will destroy Donald Trump in 2020. It will be a historic landslide. I'm not saying anything, I'm just saying. Thanks for watching this free clip of the Young Turks. Don't forget to become a TYT member today. For more exclusive content, join now at tyt.com/join.